Welcome back to the Game or Die podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Moore, and today I'm going to be talking about a couple games that I've been playing. I've been pretty busy with work and building the studio and getting everything ready and just dealing with a lot of other computer issues and data loss and all that fun stuff. So I haven't really put a ton of time into playing games over the last several weeks since I've been gone for a week in California and came back last week. And I've just been doing a lot of house and life stuff. I got a riding mower, which is super, super fun because we actually have a yard now that I need to maintain. And good grief, I mowed the lawn last Saturday, and I'm recording Saturday, 1 week later. And within 1 week, the grass is back to where it was. And that's not like it's like half an inch. No, it's like 5 inches, 6 inches at least. The grass here grows so freaking fast. It's insane. So uh, I got to go get on the lawnmower sometime this weekend. I'm probably going to do that tomorrow. But that took like an entire day getting it from Home Depot, driving over there with a trailer, getting it home, unloading it, learning how the thing stinking works, and then hopping on and then cutting our entire 2 acre yard. So that was an entire day that was just wasted from doing anything else really. It was just like exhausting. Like our uh, our yard is fairly flat for the most part, but in the backyard it definitely does have a lot of hills, and we had this torrential storm a couple days before, and the grass was so muddy and the hill was so muddy that I actually got the thing stuck, and I had to have my wife come out and help me push it up the hill. And then I went to the side yard, that's where most of our acreage is, and cut the rest of that for the rest of the day. And geez, that just it took all day. It wasn't that long, but learning how the thing works and doing a secondary pass and just being out there in the sun, it was pretty warm. It was the day before Easter, and we actually had decent warm weather for the last couple of days. And so it's exhausting. I'll say that much. So that's what I've been doing. But I have been playing some games. I have a Valheim that I've been continuing to kind of just play a little bit here and there on my server. That's pretty fun. I played a little bit more Star Wars Squadrons in VR. I'm really enjoying it. VR is such an incredible thing. And this is the other thing. I wasn't even going to talk about this. I forgot until just now. But about 2 weeks ago, I was playing a lot more Star Wars Squadrons in VR and just really enjoying the dogfighting and everything that comes along with that game. I really wish the cutscenes and the game was fully built for VR, but VR mode really does escalate that game into just a better gameplay experience. Like if you're going to be doing dogfighting and cockpit views and stuff like that, nothing beats VR. I think VR with a HOTAS system, like actual flight control system, I think that would be the ultimate goal, and it would be super fun. And someday, once lumber and building materials lowers again, gets not ridiculously priced, I would love to build a cockpit of some sort. And I'm sure my dad and I will be doing that for him when he gets around to actually being able to build his flight simulator cockpit, because he's super excited about that. And I can't wait to help build that for him. I did play another kind of flight game. It was Panzer Dragoon. Uh, Back when the Sega Saturn launched, there was a series called Panzer Dragoon, and there's been a couple of them. Panzer Dragoon Saga, Orta, the original, and Orta was the one that I first played. Panzer Dragoon Orta came out on the original Xbox, and I really liked being able to basically play a lot of the original Xbox version in my garage room that I lived in when I was younger. and I have such great memories of that. I haven't really played much of that series other than Orta, and then a little bit of Panzer Dragoon Saga, which I actually owned. Um, if anyone doesn't know about Panzer Dragoon Saga, it was a very rare print of that game. They only made several thousand copies of that game. And so if you try going looking on eBay or whatever for that game, it's crazy expensive. At the time I bought it in 2009, it was roughly about $300 for a single 3 disc game. It's a very rare game on Sega Saturn. I actually had a copy of it, and then my house flooded and I lost that copy, and it was such a bummer. But I never really paid close attention to that series. I liked Panzer Dragoon Orta when I played it. I knew that they were doing a remake of Panzer Dragoon on the PC and Switch and all that fun stuff. Well, for whatever reason, I think it was just on sale. It's been like 20 bucks, and I knew it wasn't going to be a great game. I knew the reviews weren't great on it. So I just kind of had it in my wish list on Steam, and then there was a sale and it was like 5 bucks. So I was like, dude, 5 bucks, sure, why not? And I sat down one night and I played through the entire thing in one sitting because it's a super short game, like 45 minutes long, if that. I think the cutscenes are longer than some of the levels in that game. And it was kind of a bummer because I wanted more of what that game really was. But for what it is, it's fine. It's not that big of a deal. It's nice to be able to say I played Panzer Dragoon and played through all of it because it's a super short game. It's fun, but it's nothing amazing. The other game that I've been playing, and this is again just because my time has been so focused on work, I haven't really had much time to play a bunch of games, but I started finally Crash Bandicoot 4. It's about time. And I want to like this game a lot more than I do. I want to like the Crash series more than I do. When I replayed through the Crash series last year, at the very beginning of last year, I had a harder time going back to those games because I didn't really play through a whole lot of them. I played a little bit of one. I don't think I played two at all. And then I played a little bit of three on the original PlayStation when it came out. I got it for Christmas. And I think I might have maybe gotten close to beating it, but I don't think I actually ever beat that game. So when the remake came out and I played through it last year, I realized, oh, the Crash games are more focused on collecting and getting 100%. Playing through the game is not the main priority for the game. It's there and you should do it, but that's not what they want you to really do. They want you to dig through every nook and cranny, find every little hidden thing in that game, and get all the collectibles. Get all the 100 boxes or however many there are. Get all the different lives. Get all the different pickups and things like that. And I just have not been enjoying that type of format in games. I don't really care for the secrets in most games because they don't really do anything for me. I'm there for the gameplay mechanics and the story. If you make a fun game and I'm enjoying my time, I want to dig in more. But 3D platformers, they're my favorite series. And I'm just not getting a whole lot of enjoyment out of this series. So I'm playing it. I'm enjoying it. I'm probably about halfway through at this point. It definitely piles on a lot into this series. And I guess because they're still keeping with the original Crash format for that 3D platformer. You've got a very linear path, and the main goal is not just to get to the end, but get to the end by grabbing every single box in the level. And if you miss it, well, you're just going to replay the level over and over and over again and dig through that level and explore as much as you possibly can, every nook and cranny until you finally get the actual game or the actual 100% completion. And then on top of that, there's all these other extra things by getting all as many little fruits as possible. And then there's so much to it There's these playback levels, there's, repeating it with other characters as well. There's multiple characters you can play through, the game with, and that's all fine and dandy, but I'm not gonna replay these levels. These levels kind of not are just a little bit longer than I feel like they should. They're a good 10 minutes at some points when you're calculating in all the deaths, and the deaths feel very cheap in some cases. There's a lot of trial and error with Crash games, and I'm okay with that to an extent. But with Crash, like, you really got to be like just super focused. And while I'm playing these games, I'm kind of not super focused. And I end up just kind of forgetting something because there's long stretches where you have to be perfect in your run before you hit a checkpoint. And most of the case, I usually do most of the way through the checkpoint system until the very, very end. I see the checkpoint box and then I accidentally get killed. Either I accidentally mistime a jump or I get killed by a bad guy, and they're one hit kills. You do have the Aku Aku, mask that will give you a little bit of protection, one hits. It's like the Super Mario mushroom, but they're a lot fewer and farther between than I've seen in the other Crash games. And like I said, I've played through the first three Crash games on the remake last year. So I'm familiar with the series at this point. It just feels like a little too much. They also introduce multiple masks as well. You don't just have Aku Aku. You don't have I can't remember the other mask name, but you also have Lanu Leaky or something like that. He's another mask and he's voiced by um oh man, I cannot remember his name and it's gonna kill me, but he's the voice actor who plays Raz in Psychonauts, my favorite game of all time, but also Invader Zim, and he's a well-known voice actor. So as soon as I heard his voice, I was like, hey, it's Raz. Um, but it's a good game. I'm enjoying it for what it is. It's not gonna be in my top 10 at all. I don't even think it's a B game, really what it is. And I like the fact that it came out. I like the fact that they're putting it out because we need more of these types of games. I just don't think it deserved to be like produced and distributed and marketed as a, top tier type of game. I saw a lot of coverage when this game first came out and it was just like, yeah, it's a Crash game. That's how I feel. But a lot of, the marketing behind the game was acting like it's oh my gosh, it's Crash 4, finally, the long awaited return of Crash. And it's like, when you play the game, it's just another Crash game. And we had tons and tons of extra Crash games. Twin Sanity on the original Xbox was one of my favorite. It's my favorite Crash game. I loved that game when it came out because it expanded on the Crash series. This is definitely more in line with Crash 1, 2, and 3. And obviously, because they put out that remake a couple years ago, there's more of a interest and it definitely deserves to be called Crash 4 because it's exactly like those games. It's just not amazing. It's like a, "Hey, here's a return to form. Here's a return to Crash the way that we all remember it from the first original 3. So let's call it 4. Let's have it in the same style. Put it out." But I mean, l- hey, I'm not one to talk about top 10s, in certain games because my top 10 for last year was Streets of Rage 4, and the year before that was Toe Jam and Earl Back in the Groove. So a lot of nostalgia based on my top one game of the last several years. So I get it if someone says, I love this game, Crash is my favorite series, then great, awesome. I'm not in that, mindset of loving the gameplay style of Crash. I like it. I think it's a fun game. I'm really enjoying my time with it. It's just definitely not going to be in my top 10, but that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's just a little bit too hard for me because I hate trial and error games. That's why I hate Dark Souls. It's just here, here's a place you need to get through, and we're going to have a lot of cheap deaths and kills, and you're just going to play through this over and over and over and over and over until you get it. So, yeah, it was just kind of a whatever, I'll play this. Yeah, it's not going to be that big of a deal, but that's the last kind of thing that I've been playing. I've just been doing so much other stuff and I've just been exhausted. My body has been going back and forth between time zones across the country so many times this year that it's a lot on my body. So my sleep schedule is still all out of whack. I think I went to bed at 11 o'clock last night for first time in months, just because I was so exhausted. I didn't even really do anything yesterday. Oh, I've been building a studio and walls, and I built a door yesterday, so that was a little exhausting, but hey, it's fun. I'm still having a blast. In my off time, though, I have been doing a couple other things. I've been getting a lot more into comics again, and I've been watching some more movies and TV. My wife and I have been going through Fringe because it is her favorite TV show. And when we were dating, she got me to start watching it. And I like this series. I think it's a really good series. But when we first were dating, I wasn't super into it. And I honestly don't know why. I think it definitely is up there as some of the greatest TV shows of all time. I think the storytelling is perfect. I think um the relationships are really well done. I think the only issue that I really have with it is in the 3rd and 4th season, they tweak the storyline and they do a lot because it's all based on supernatural stuff happening. And my quick elevator pitch for the game is series is it's like X Files, but with not aliens, just supernatural phenomenon and a lot of time travel as well. So there's time travels and alternate universe stuff going on. And in the 3rd and 4th season, they just really changed the formula of the actual show to where you just kind of are going, well, where is this going? Where is this going? Where is this going? And it starts kind of repeating a little bit, not too much, but a little bit. And I think the first time I watched the series, I just kind of got bored because I was like, I'm really invested in these characters. And you're having these weird semi filler episodes. And I just hate filler episodes in TV shows when you're binge watching it. When you're watching it year to year, as it's airing, it's not that big of a deal. But when you're binge watching it, it's like, okay, do I really need to sit through this 45-minute episode that's not going to advance the story plot? When are we going to get to the story plot? And they introduce other characters that are very similar to the original characters in the show, but sometimes you just don't care. And it's like that with a lot of TV shows. So it's not that big of a deal. I highly, highly recommend it. We're still going through it. We're on season 4 at this point, midway through season 4. So we got about half a season to season 5, and then season 5 is the last. So hopefully we'll finish that up in the next couple of weeks here because I really like it. But like I said, TV and movies. I've been watching a few movies. I'm not a big movie fan anymore. Movies used to be one of my favorite things of all time. I would watch movies every day, multiple movies every day, and then I would rewatch movies over and over again with my friends when I was in high school and things like that. As I got older, I realized movies take up an enormous amount of your time. You can watch a couple movies in a day, but that's your entire day, and you just sat there. That's why I like video games because at least I'm participating in some aspect of it. But I love movies too. And a lot of movies lately are just so bad and so not worth my time. You have to be a really good movie to really get me to be invested in watching it, especially if it's 2+ hours long. So the other night, I was sitting there in bed and just kind of, my wife was reading and doing stuff, and I was just sitting there looking on my Plex server, and I came across a movie called Cyrano de Bergerac. It's a 1950s movie, and everyone has known about this. It's based off a play, and it's about a guy with a really long nose who is in love with someone, but the person she's in love with is someone else. And that someone else really loves her too. And he enlists Cyrano, the main character, the guy with a really long nose, to help him woo her, basically. And so he's sitting there behind the tree, and the main character, and he's feeding lines to the girl who, or the guy who the girl is in love with. You've seen it parodied a billion times in movies and TV and comics and video games and everything. You've seen it a million times, but I never knew what it was really based on. I never watched the actual movie or seen the play. The play's in the late 1800s, and the movie came out in 1950. And I was sitting there and going, Cyrano de Bergerac. Oh, right, that's the show with a guy, or the movie with a guy with a long nose. And there was a old 80s or early 90s film called Roxanne, and it's with Martin. Steve Martin plays the Cyrano character in a modern adaptation of the play. So I really wanted to watch it because I actually liked Roxanne when I saw it, probably about 11, 12 years ago, back in like 2008, 9, somewhere around there. I really, really liked it. So I wanted to watch the original, and I did. And I fell in love with this movie. This movie is so well done. It's a shame that people haven't seen it. Modern people haven't seen it, because I'm sure when it came out, it did really well. But man, they don't make movies like this anymore. And that's why I fell in love with it, is because it is so much more interesting on a technical aspect, written dialogue, acting, sound design, set pieces, editing. Everything about this movie is top notch. I'm pretty lenient when it comes to ratings of movies, even games and stuff like that too. I think numbered ratings and things are, yeah, I want to say the word subversive, but I don't think that's really what I mean. It's very personal. When you rank something or rate something and review it and give it a rating, it's a very personal experience. When you rate video games online and things like that, everyone basically will do it as a barometer of, is this a good game or a bad game? Is this a good movie or a bad movie? And I think I'd say 90% of the things that are put out there are totally, absolutely fine. That's why I like 5-star reviews over 10-star reviews. 10-star reviews go a little bit into the minutia of reviewing that you don't really need. 5-star reviews basically fall into the category of 1 star is absolutely horrible. You should never watch or play this at all. It should have never been made. 2 stars is it's bad. It's really bad. Don't even waste your time. 3 is, yeah, it's okay. It's not good. It's not bad. It's just mediocre at best. 4 is, this is pretty dang good. I highly suggest it. And 5 is, dang dude, you have to play this game no matter who you are or what you like. It is amazing. It's not perfect. It's just amazing. So that's why I like 5-star reviews for things. This movie for me would be a 5-star movie. It is absolutely phenomenal. I don't think the word perfect ever will describe anything, because I don't think any movie or game or book or song or anything can be perfect, because it's very personal. When I watch something like this, I think it is perfect for me, but I would never tell anyone it's a perfect movie, because there was one shot in it, and it's kind of near the end of the movie, where Cyrano's off to war. He's fighting in a battleground, and you can tell it's a set piece because it was made in 1950, and the sets weren't that great back then. Watch old, horror movies like The Invisible Man and Dracula and Frankenstein, and you'll see that some of the sets are great, some of them are pretty crappy. So some of the set pieces are pretty crappy in this because that's just what it was back in the time. It's how movies were made on sound sets, and things like that. So I think this is a perfect movie for me. I think it's an amazing movie that everyone should watch. It's a 2-hour long movie, and the dialogue is so well written and fastly acted and paced that it can be difficult for most people to watch, though. I know if I said to my wife, "You need to watch this," and we sat down and tried to watch it, she would not appreciate it the way that I do. And that's okay because that's not her type of style. But I think it's definitely worth, watching because it is such a relevant piece of media. We were watching 30 Rock because that's like our go-to, kind of just like, we have nothing to watch. Let's just throw on 30 Rock for a little bit. And there's this episode where uh, Jack Donaghy, the Alec Baldwin's character, goes to his girlfriend, Cece, who he's in love with, and they're kind of doing the Romeo and Juliet thing where they can't be together because they're on opposite sides of the political spectrum, and it would be death to them for their jobs and careers if the media found out about them getting together. But he loves her, and so him and Tracy Jordan, or Tracy Morgan's character, Tracy Jordan, go to her at her place of work, and he's like, I don't know what to say. And Tracy Jordan gives him these lines as he's hiding behind a trash can. And it's all played up for comedic effect. And he's just giving her stupid line, or he's giving Jack Donaghy stupid lines to say. And Jack's like, no, I'm not going to say that. I'll just say what's in my heart. But it's a play on the play. It's a play on the Cyrano de Bergerac story. And that was like literally the day before that I started watching this movie. So it's relevant to media, and watching this movie is such a great experience because you just sit back, you take it all in, and you realize, dude, they don't make movies like this anymore. And it's such a bummer because I would take this movie over anything that has come out in the last 5 years. Easy. Top. I say that 100% true. I'd rather watch Cyrano de Bergerac, made in 1950, over Infinity War. Or, that's kind of like the go-to thing. The reason why is because superhero movies, whatever. They're not that big of a deal to me. I love superheroes. I'll talk about comics in just a moment here. But superhero movies are just, I grew up with them, and I've grown up with superhero TV shows and movies. And now that we're getting all these actually really well done superhero movies, that's awesome. Man, I can't believe what it would be like to be a kid nowadays getting all these great movies, because I grew up in the time where we had the Nick Fury and played by David Hasselhoff, and Captain America, where he literally strands a woman on the side of the road and steals her car. That's the Captain America movie I grew up with. Grew up with also some really good superhero stuff, but that was more TV, the animated series of Batman, and Spider-Man and Justice League and all that stuff, and animated Superman and Batman Beyond. Those were all really good superhero animated TV shows, but I have so much of that, and especially reading comics too, that you watch these Marvel blockbuster movies and DC blockbuster movies, and you realize, yeah, they're good for what they are, but they're actually not that great. That's my personal opinion. I felt really bad the other day because Zack Snyder's Justice League came out, and I don't even know if I've ever gone on a rant on this podcast about DC movies, but holy crap, I'm gonna try and not to because I don't want to just waste everyone's time. But if you look at the cinematic versions of Marvel and DC, DC's is terrible. Their output of movies is just absolutely garbage to me. I think they are horrible. I don't think any of them are actually even good. I don't like, and people will say, oh, what about the Nolan Batman movies? I don't like them. I do not like the Nolan Batman movies because that's not Batman. That is a dude playing Batman it's like if I dressed up as Batman and had a lot of money and I could invent some stuff Yeah, that's what that is. It's not a Batman story. It's a realistic version of Batman. It's basically Elseworlds if it was written for modern times. Like Batman in if what if Batman could be real? Remember, like a decade ago, there was a real life Batman in like New Zealand or something, and he would fight crime, and he had the the superhero suit on, and he would literally be a vigilante, and then he got shot, um, and then like had to go to the hospital and stuff. Like that's how I view this. It's the Nolan stuff is like, that's cool, but that's not Batman. I hate the look of Batman in those films. I do not like Christian Bale at all as an actor, and I hate his Batman voice. But again, it's neither here nor there. I'm trying not to go into too much of a rant. Same thing with Marvel, though. Marvel, yes, they get the characters right, but it is so cookie cutter, and everyone has to be smarmy and have a quip, and um, just I just don't like them very much. Like I said, I I enjoyed watching Infinity War and Endgame and all that, but when I saw them, I went, "Oh, that's great! I'll never watch that movie ever again." Why would I? It's just a movie, and it's not even that great of a movie. It just everything is so predictable and so, like I said, smarmy, and every character has to have a quip or some smart aleck remark to everything, and it's just I hate that style of writing. It was fine when Judd Apatow was doing it in 2005, but now is just it is not good, especially for superheroes, because not every one of them is like that. So, like I said, I kind of felt like a jerk the other day because the Snyder Cut came out, and my friend Jeff and I, we have it's a very different relationship than I've had with most people. I love Jeff. He's one of my best friends, but we do have kind of this push and pull type of relationship every once in a while. And I respect his opinions and views on all the stuff that we do, and we have a podcast that we try to get to. And I, I love when Jeff loves something because it makes me want to love the thing even more. We did this podcast about The Stupids. It's a really bad movie. I hated this movie with a passion, but he loved it so much. And this one scene in particular, he could not get through talking about it because he was laughing so much that it made me love the movie a little bit more because of how much he loved it. So we have a group text, and he texted me about how what I thought about the Snyder Cut. And I said, "Oh, I haven't watched it." And I kind of went into this whole diatribe of how much I hate DC movies, live action DC movies, and the fact that the Snyder Cut to me is, and this is just basically a watered down version of what I said, but the Snyder Cut is a 4 hour long version of a 2017 movie that I already hated. Why would I watch it? And that was pretty much it. Like, it's not a different movie. It's a different cut of the movie. It's a different editing of the movie. Yes, they added a crap ton more to it, but it is still, at its core, the same movie that everyone hated in 2017, which was what? 18, 19, 20, 21. 4 years ago. It's the same movie, just with added. It's like watching a movie with the deleted scenes thrown in. Most of the time, deleted scenes are deleted for a reason. Yes, back in the day, deleted scenes used to be awesome because you would have this movie that you grew up with or watched 1,000 times, and then you realize, oh, there's more to it, and then you would watch all these. One of my favorite go-tos is Pee-wee's Big Adventure. There were some deleted scenes that they didn't put in there, and I thought they made the movie a little bit more enjoyable or hilarious. But it doesn't need to be in there for the most part. Same thing with the Snyder Cut, in my opinion. So I heard all these people, I watched podcasts and reviews and all this stuff, and I just went, Well, I have the movie. Might as well just skip through it. So I was in the middle of I was right about to go to bed. I was under the covers. I was just ready to go to bed and just went, I want to see what this looks like. Because one of the things that really threw me off for a loop was the aspect ratio of the movie. I went, wait, what? Because I remember hearing about it on the podcast and people were talking about the aspect ratio and it didn't bother them. And so I loaded it up and I went, oh, wow, the aspect ratio is actually different. I'm not sure why either. I haven't really looked into it. And the reason why is because I really don't care about the movie one way or the other enough to actually even just type into Google, like, why is the aspect ratio? I probably will after this, but I'm not going to do it in the middle of the podcast. But Justice League, the aspect ratio is a little bit different. So that was the first thing I noticed. And then I literally just started skipping through the scenes because I watched a review of the original Justice League like the night before. And I was like, well, I want to see what they added in. And this was like a couple days after it came out. And so people haven't put up all the comparison videos and all that. And I saw them like yesterday or whatever. But I just kind of skipped through it in Plex or whatever, and I went, okay, okay, and I watched some scenes. I thought the fight scenes were kind of cool and stuff, and I was like, oh, that's cool. But almost all of the standing around talking, which is one of my most hated things about these types of movies. Everyone just stands around and talks for 90% of the movie. And you're watching these superhero movies. Why would you? And this is the difference between superhero movies and superhero comics. The dialogue for superhero movies is always awful. And the reason why it's awful is because it's always written for the lowest common denominator audience, children. It's written for children. It is written for people who don't care about these characters and just want the baseline stuff. You don't get into any heavy details when you watch this stuff in the dialogue because they're writing it so that as many people as possible can watch this movie and understand it. So gone are all the nuances of the characters, the turmoil within these characters and everything like that. And that's why everyone has to have a quip. I watched this movie and I hated Flash. I half watched this movie because, like I said, I just kind of skipped through everything. Flash just is a joke machine the entire time. And if you've read the actual comics, he's not. There is some comedic relief to that character, but he is not joking around, falling, tripping over himself 24/7 every single moment of the film. Like, oh, it was just like, it's eye rolling. It's like, oh my gosh, it's written for children. I can tell every single moment they were writing his character, they went, oh, some kid's gonna love saying this over and over and over and over and over again. It's like, oh gosh. Also, I think the costume design is absolutely atrocious in every single one of those movies. They look like a bunch of idiots. One of my favorite things I've ever seen about commentating on movies was from Conan. When I think this was this was when he had his original show. But he did this video where he said, hey, we're going to make fun of movies for whatever reason. And they took out the scene of audio. They had the scene of these people getting together and hanging out in a kitchen, and they're all friends, and they play some music and they start dancing around. And they pull the audio from it and make it super awkward and kind of do some crappy Foley effects to it. I can't remember what movie they were joking about or using to do this, but it felt so awkward. And that's how I feel when I watch these superhero movies where these people are standing around in costumes. Got to a scene where they're all on the top of Gotham City Police Department, and Jim Gordon's standing there, and they're talking. They're all in a group. So you have Batman, Wonder Woman, Cyborg, and Flash. And they all just look like a bunch of loser nerds. They look like a bunch of Comic-Con cosplayers standing on the roof talking to this cop. And you just can't take them seriously because the costumes look dumb. And that's one of the reasons why it's really hard to be doing real life comic book movies, real live action comic book movies, is because the costume, everyone standing around just looks like an idiot. And I hate the way it looks. I hate the way it's shot. I hate the muted colors. I hate everything about it. So I've skipped through the Justice League movie. I saw all the scenes that they added in. I saw the changes. I thought it was a better movie, but at the end of the day, my opinion didn't change one bit on it. It was still a 4-hour long version of a movie that everyone hated. Oh, but what about Darkseid? What about him? He literally is in the movie for like a minute screen time. Out of 4 hours, he's in there for a minute. And what does he do? He stands, he does exactly what everyone else does in all of those movies. They stand around, he sounds like a monster, he grunts a bunch, he says a couple lines of dialogue, and throughout the entire tons of scenes, and then he walks away, and then that's it. Why could I couldn't care less about this character, Darkseid. And again, oh my gosh, it is literally just DC's version, copycat version of what Marvel did. Oh, Darkseid is trying to get the mother boxes that will give him ultimate power, and they're all located across the universe, and he has to travel all along the universe to grab all the mother boxes so that he has ultimate power. Thanos has to get all the Infinity Gems, and he has to grab them because they're all located all around the universe, and he has to get them so he can have ultimate power. It's literally the same character, literally the same motivations, literally the same story. Why would I want that? I already saw it years ago. Oh, it's baffling that comics have so much history to pull from. All these amazing writers and all these amazing story arcs. And they go with the most generic and also the copycat version of what someone else already did. You want to know my go-to favorite favorite story that they could have done for DC? Infinity Crisis. Do the Infinity Crisis, or no, sorry, not Infinity Crisis, the Identity Crisis storyline. The Identity Crisis storyline is a billion times better. It involves the Justice League, and it's not what they did in Marvel years prior. So right there is a better told story, could be better acted, could be better shot, and has a lot more and is varied. It's just like, I really wish that it wasn't so predictable. I wish it wasn't a ripoff of everything else, and I wish it wasn't written for children. Yes, comic books were for children. Yeah, that was back in the 30s. Um, it is a different medium than it is now. There are multiple demographics that you can write to, and especially with what DCU was trying to do, which is make it darker and grittier and more realistic and not as sunshiny and all that, is the Marvel movies take a darker storyline, take something that is not just, oh, all the races of the world need to come together so that they can defeat the ultimate evil. It's like, you can go darker, you can go broader and different in different ways. Oh, it's such a pain in the butt to see the same thing. It's like, I didn't even know what the storyline was for Justice League. And if I went into that movie and paid for it, I would have been pissed off. Because it's the same storyline in the Snyder version. Because again, it's just a director's cut. It's not an entirely different movie. And I said that since people were going hashtag Snyder cut, is because it's the same movie. Did you like the 2017 Justice League movie? If you didn't, it's the same movie. If you did, it's a better version of that movie. That's all it is. So, let me talk about something that I did like. Um, uh, okay, let me talk about the other movies that I watched really quick. Back in 2019, in October, there was this movie. I was sitting at dinner with my wife. We went to this restaurant on the lake, and it was one of our favorite restaurants we went to. We only went to it a couple times. Really good, but kind of expensive. There was a TV in the bar area that I kind of caught a glimpse of, and they played the trailer for a movie called The Lighthouse with Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. And it caught my eye because I went, "Oh, black and white movie. That sounds interesting." And so I watched this black and white movie um, about two lighthouse keepers. And it's just the two of them, the entire movie. There's no one really else in the movie. Technically, there's one or two other characters, but let's not really dwell on that. You have Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson playing these two lighthouse keepers called Wickies. And they basically take a month-long shift on this remote island that has a lighthouse, and they have to be lighthouse keepers for a month, and then a new crew will come in and they leave. That's the plot of it. It's the entire plot of the story. Well, basically they go mad, and it's really, I'm not going to give away, I'm not going to spoil the movie, but they basically go mad and you don't know who to believe throughout the entire movie. And it's just so well done. They, again, it's a movie that I sat there and I kind of felt crappy afterwards. It's a movie that doesn't have a great ending, is really awkward, and I don't like. It's technically a horror movie, and I hate horror movies, but I was so intrigued by this that I had to sit down and watch it. And I've been wanting to watch it for the last year and a half. And when I told my wife about it, and I pointed out when we were watching or when we were having dinner before it came out, I said, "Oh, that movie looks cool. It looks really interesting. You want to go see it?" And she said, "Sure." And then when it was coming out in the theater, we just didn't go see it for whatever reason. Then when it came out to watch online and download, I said, "Oh, I want to watch the Lighthouse," and she said, "Oh, I don't know. That kind of looks a little bit creepy. Maybe some other time." And then some other time just kind of went and went and went and went and went. So um, I find I'm glad we didn't watch it together because she would have absolutely hated this movie, and I do too. I think that there's definitely some scenes that are really gross, unnecessary, disgusting scenes that I did not like or approve of. But you remove those things, and I think the film is really well done. It's amazing storytelling, and just it's a work of art. That's what I love about movies is you have a director who really cares, who wants to put his vision out and did all the things to make it, and all the behind the scenes stuff about this movie is just incredible. But it has such a distinct look to it. There's nothing else quite like it. It is shot for black and white. They used a special film stock that actually required a very high contrast, and so the lighting had to be completely different. They're shooting in some scenes so bright that the actors are almost blinded by the lights, and it's such a dark movie too that you very rarely get, really bright lights, but it brings out the contrast of the lighting and the pores in their skin and the fibers of the clothing. It is just an incredible piece of art, and that's what I loved about it. The ending was disturbing. The narrative of it was really unnerving and just kind of like weird, but it set a tone, and it was such an interesting viewing experience for me because I really waited until almost the perfect time to watch this movie. 2 o'clock in the morning. So I didn't go to bed until like 3 or 4. So it was like 1:30 in the morning when I started it. And I think it's a 2 hour movie. So it was like 3:30 when I ended the movie. In the middle of the night, by myself, in complete dark, while a thunder and lightning and rainstorm was going on outside. That's how I watched this movie. And it was such an interesting viewing experience. I loved it. Sitting there cuddled up underneath a blanket and kind of like a little bit scared. And I hate being scared, but if it's scared for a good reason, not just like jump scares and stuff like that with most modern horror or satanic stuff, I don't like that either. But when when it is unnerving and unsettling and the atmosphere of the movie, it's just, oh, it was incredible. It was a really enjoyable experience, even though there was definitely some scenes, like I said, that I did not like or really want to watch. But I liked the viewing experience of it, and I think it's an amazing piece of art. And if you like those types of movies, you're in for a treat. If you don't, then oh man, you stay away from it for sure. So I personally really like Ready Player One. I thought I'm not talking about the movie, I'm talking about the book. When the book came out, it was like the perfect, storm for me, owning my own video game store. When the audiobook came out, I listened to it on my way back and forth. It's like a 14, 16 hour long audiobook. I had an hour and a half long commute every day. So I just spent like a week and a half listening to that audiobook read by Will Wheaton. And it deals with VR, and VR was, not really, a thing yet when that book came out, and then a couple years later, VR started becoming a thing, and, my thoughts on VR. So, I think it was just a perfect book for me. I think the story is awesome, the characters are awesome in it. It's really fun. So, the sequel to the book came out a couple months ago, and I got it, and I got the audiobook, and I've been listening to it, and I really wanted to, dive a little bit deeper into some of the references in that book. A lot of people hate the book because they think it's just reference after reference after reference. And yes, there's a lot of references in it, but it's for a reason. There is a reason why there's a billion references in it, because that's what the Oasis is in that book. It's this online media forum. And guess what? Those same people who talk about these, oh, that book is just a bunch of references. They're the same people who like memes, and that's what memes are too. So those people are idiots, in my opinion. Anyways, the sequel came out, and I wanted to rewatch the movie because my wife and I, we definitely bonded over the book, the original book when it first came out. It was one of the things on my online profile that caught her attention. It was like, "Oh, what books do you read?" And I said, "Well, I really like Ready Player One," and kind of described it to her and stuff like that. And she was like, "Oh, that's great." And the movie came out, we watched it. Well, I wanted to kind of rewatch parts of the movie to kind of see what it was about because I don't remember the movie very well. So I threw it on the other day, and there's this part where they talk about Buckaroo Banzai. And I was like, "Oh, that's right. That movie I never even knew about until several years ago when the book came out." And I was like, "Buckaroo Banzai? I don't think I've ever even, what is that?" So I got it, and I didn't realize it's Peter Weller, which is most famously known for RoboCop. Jeff Goldblum and Christopher Lloyd are in it as well. I was like, "Oh man, this is gonna be great." So I watched it last night, and wow, that movie is terrible. It's a really bad movie. I don't think a lot of movies are very bad. This is a bad movie. And there's a reason for it. The reason why it's bad is not because it's poorly acted or poorly shot or anything like that. It's because the story is a mess. And it's a bad movie because it throws you into the deep end. It does the exact opposite of what all the I think the Marvel movies did a little bit too much. They have, a whole movie setting up the origin story of every single one of these characters. You don't need to know the origin story of every single one of these characters. They're um they're Pulp Fiction, or not Pulp Fiction. They're already domain characters. Everyone knows who Spider-Man is. Everyone knows who Batman is. Everyone knows who Superman and Aquaman and Wonder Woman are. They don't under everyone, most people know who Thor is. Everyone knows now, obviously, but most people knew who these characters were because they had 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years of characters, storylines being developed over time, over movies and TV and media and comics and shows and, you know, uh, manufacturing processes, birthday cakes and all the paper plates and stuff like that. Everyone knows who these characters are. No one knows who Buckaroo Banzai is because Buckaroo Banzai is just a made up character for this movie. So the movie starts off basically with like three little paragraphs, tiny paragraphs going really quickly who this character is. Buckaroo Banzai is half American, half Japanese, and he is a scientist and also does comics and is a movie star and has a band. He's a all-in-one greatest person on earth, and everyone loves him and knows him, and he's known throughout all the world. That's all you really get. The movie starts off with him being he's also a neurosurgeon. So he's a neurosurgeon, starts off in surgery, like performing on a surgery, and then immediately walks out and then gets in a car and then doesn't time travel. He travels through dimensions in this rocket propelled car in the desert that all these scientists are doing. And they don't even touch on any of this stuff. They act like it's no big deal. This is just another day in the life of Buckaroo Banzai, the greatest person, Superman on Earth. And then the movie goes from there and he travels to a different dimension. And then there's aliens and then also interdimensional aliens. And it just, it's a mess. It's a terrible movie. And I'm bummed because I like all the actors in this movie. But good grief, what a mess of a plot. What a mess of a story. What a mess of a character. It does too much. This would be the 8th or ninth movie in a series of movies about Buckaroo Banzai, not the first introduction to the character. If this movie started out saying, here's Buckaroo Banzai, he's a great person. He's a neurosurgeon and he's also a scientist and also a comic book writer and also a band. And they kind of touched on a little bit of that without any overarching villain to take care of or anything like that. Maybe just kind of developing like, oh, how to travel through dimensions. Well, we got to do a couple tests. Oh, the car breaks down or explodes in the first test, and the car gets a little bit better, but we didn't make it in the second test, and then the third test is the final test at the end of the movie. And hey, look at it, I traveled through time, and oh, there was this thing that latched onto the underside of the car, and oh wow, what's that? End of movie. Next movie, done. And while I was watching this, I just pulled up like the IMDb and the trivia for this stuff and just kind of started reading some of it. And apparently there's a whole like side plot, another plot in this movie that got cut completely for whatever reason. And that was supposed to lead into the sequel, which never happened. Thank God, because it would have been awful. But it's the characters don't get touched on at all. They don't explain themselves. They don't explain how the universe of this movie works. Oh, John Lithgow is also in this movie as the villain. And he's introduced as this raving lunatic. And then he has these dreams and then he kills a bunch of people. So apparently he was faking his insanity. I don't know. It just doesn't make, but he's also an alien. Like, who knows? The movie sucks. It's a bad movie. I'm kind of almost upset that I watched this whole movie because good grief, it's bad. So, after all of that, I do want to talk about a couple comics really quick here before I end this podcast because like I said, I've been reading a lot of comics, and this is why the whole Zack Snyder thing really pissed me off because that there's so many good comics that I've read lately. One of the things is, like I said, my friend Jeff, he loves Wolverine. Wolverine is his favorite character. And I've been really getting into the original Wolverine series by Chris Claremont back in the late 80s, early 90s. And a new series came out a couple months ago called Wolverine Black and White. Wolverine Black, White, and Blood. And it's a black, white, and red story, colored story where it's all black and white except for anything that has blood or red in it. And the color red shows up, but that's it. And it's an anthology series of a bunch of different stories from Wolverine's past. It starts off at the very first page saying, like Wolverine narrating, like, "Oh, you know about me and my stories, but there's a lot more stories that I have left to tell. Some unsung battles and blah blah blah." So each comic book, each issue has two, three, maybe four. I can't remember. It's been a couple weeks since I read it. About three series or stories in that one issue, and they all take place during different times in Wolverine's life. And it's so well written. Just this little tiny story is so much better than anything of the entire DC universe, cinematic universe that they put on screen. I'd rather read that comic 1,000 times over than watching, Justice League Zack Snyder version, because that's a better story. Um, so I read all of these. I think it's like 4 issues long, and I loved them. It's really, really good. And at the end of the last issue, it says, "Stay tuned for Carnage, Black, White, and Blood." And it went, ooh, because Carnage is one of my favorite villains of all time. Uh, Ever since Maximum Carnage on the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, I've loved the Carnage character and his action figure. I had both series um, of the action figure. When he came to the animated series of Spider-Man TV show, I loved it. It was one of my favorite storylines. I just love that character. He's so dark and evil, and just like his name implies, Carnage. He's Carnage incarnate. He is just there to kill people. And one of my favorite taglines is on his Marvel Universe trading card. His tagline, his quote is, "I'm killing you because I can." That's the type of character he is. He doesn't have some ultra want to take over the universe plot or anything like that. He just wants to kill people because he can. It's just power, ultimately. And I want that in these Marvel and DC universe movies, these cinematic universes. A character who just wants to kill people. Because how do you take that out? Oh, we got to get he's not after power. He's not after anything else like some, universe holding thing. He just wants to kill people. So you got to take him out. How do you take him out? Do you just kill him? And then are you better than him or the same as him? All that type of stuff. So I read that the next day it got released. So I started reading it. And unfortunately, the first issue isn't very good. There was one whole issue where it's like, all right, or sorry, one story in that first issue where it says, all right, go grab a six-sided die and play along. And it's like this board game. And I'm like, no, I'm reading this in bed on a tablet. I'm not going to go grab. I don't have dice, first of all. Who has random dice? Just able to go grab some dice. It's just, it's a really bad gimmick for that comic. I will say it's interesting that they did it. Props to the person who thought, I'm going to create a story where it's like a choose your own adventure. But I thought it was done really poorly. So I read it. I didn't care for it. Hopefully the next issue is a lot better because I really like Carnage. And the other story that I started, I don't even think I talked about this on the last podcast because after I recorded it, or I read this book while I was recording or before I recorded the last episode. So it's been a while, but there was this Batman Ra's al Ghul, Batman versus Ra's al Ghul comic. And it's the worst comic I've ever read in my entire life. The writer for it, oh man, I just got to look it up. I'm sorry, I have to look this up. Okay, Batman versus Ra's al Ghul is made by Neil Adams. Neil Adams apparently wrote Batman Odyssey, and it is just the most incoherent mess of a comic book story ever. I have not read that yet, and I don't know if I want to subject myself to that. But I read this because it was coming out. It started last year and then just got dropped because of the pandemic, and then it got picked back up again, and then just finished. And so I read it, and it is the absolute worst writing I've ever seen in my entire life. It doesn't, just like everything, just like Buckaroo Banzai, it doesn't explain anything. Multiple characters are introduced. You have no idea. There's multiple Robins, and I'm not saying like Dick Grayson becomes Nightwing, who was no. There's Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, and Tim Drake. There's like three Robins, and they're all named Robin. There's no Nightwing in this universe. There's none of that anything. It's just Robin, Robin, and Robin and Batman. But Batman is also Bruce Wayne. But Bruce Wayne shows up, and the Robins are like, hey, Bruce, it looks like it looks like he's dead in this fight, and his cowl is just gone. How did you escape it? And Bruce is like, why are you talking to me like I'm Batman? And they're like, but you are. And then they go, and then half of them are like, oh, you're not Batman. And then he's like, yeah, I'm not Batman. Batman's over there. And then Batman shows. It's just like, what? It is just the stupidest storyline. It's the worst writing I've ever seen in probably anything. And people are going, oh, it's so bad it's good. No, it's bad. And I hate this type of mentality of everything having to be ironic, and people going, oh, it's so bad it's good. No, it's just bad. So there's currently 5 issues. I did not finish it because it has not been finished yet. I'm assuming in the next couple of months they're going to release the last and final arc to it, but it is so stinking bad, and I got so upset because I read it, and it was a bad comic book. So I read that, and then I also read or started reading Batman White Knight, and that's what I'm currently reading. Batman White Knight is this it's like Elseworlds. I don't know if it's in continuity or not, but it's basically saying, what if Joker tricked everyone to thinking he's been rehabilitated and Batman's actually the bad guy? And that's what goes on in this comic. And I only got through the first issue so far, but that first issue is pretty stinking good. I unfortunately read the Harley Quinn version. It's Batman White Knight Harley Quinn, and that is like an add-on or a sequel to this comic series or whatever. Unfortunately, this is why I hate comics. The way comics are numbered and organized so much. Comics really need to have an organizational tool and a formula that everyone, a naming scheme that everyone sticks to, because if you try and search for Batman and then try and get everything like in continuity, there's so many different multiple story arcs and continuity errors and naming organization errors. Like even this, just the two things. There's Batman White Knight and then Batman White Knight Harley Quinn. Where does that go in the story? Why isn't it called Batman White Knight, the sequel or whatever, Batman White Knight 2 or whatever? I just, it's frustrating. And the same thing with, if you're trying to get through any of the modern story arc stuff, like I think they just finished, what was it? King in Black. King in Black is this new thing that new Marvel tie-in that just finished, and you have King in Black Spider-Man, King in Black, whatever. But they're all different, like numbered in tie-ins and stuff. You just need to create a comic book called King in Black. And you don't need tie-ins. Not every comic needs to have a King in Black, issue. You just throw it into that comic. And I can't do it justice right now. I'm tired. I'm thirsty because I've been talking for over an hour straight. But oh my gosh, I wrote about this on the website. If you want to go to gameordie.net and look at one of my articles about comics, my rant about that is just basically saying it's impossible to chronologically order and catalog comics because there's so many different naming conventions. They need to really just bolt it down. There just needs to be like this comic authority from the major heads of the studios and say, all right, we all need to get on the same naming schedule so that 50 years down the line, it doesn't it makes sense. It needs to make sense because right now it doesn't make sense at all. Like I just was renaming all my Spawn comics, and that's super easy because there's Spawn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that started in what, like 90, 94 or whatever, and then or 93, and they're a little over 300 now, and it's just Spawn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You just can get everything in one go. Yeah, there are like omnibus. Like, oh my gosh, I just learned what an omnibus was after years and years and years, and it still doesn't make sense to me. And then there's graphic novels and trade backs, and then the comic books themselves. It's a mess. But I do like reading them. That's the real issue. It's like I want to read these stories. You just need to make it easy for people to get into. People always say, "Oh, we need to write a comic like everyone's issue. The first issue, the issue that we're writing right now could be someone's first." Yeah, that's all fine and dandy, but you don't need to act like it and waste everyone's time. Just number it properly, name it properly. That takes care of all the work for you. Oh, Spider-Man's on, like is some kid just watched Spider-Verse and wants to get into Spider-Man? All right, well, here's Spider-Man colon Spider-Verse issue 1. Oh, that started 5 years ago? Cool. Issue, 72 is going on right now. If you want to start from this starting point, they need to segregate the issues just a little bit. So they say issues 38 through 52 are the King in Black tie-in for Spider-Man, and then issues 1 through 5 are the origin story. Issue 5 through 10 is the first battle. Issue 22 through 25 is the Kingpin storyline. Like, it's so easy to do. You can do this. You sit down for a minute and just think about it. It's done. This was a really ranty episode. Anyways, sorry about that. If you don't care about comics, hey, I do. So it's my podcast. I'm really enjoying it. I think there's some really good. That's why I love all this stuff, and that's why I think a lot of podcasts do delve into all this stuff. It's unfortunate that it seems very bandwaggy sometimes. I definitely see these video game sites that are getting into wrestling articles, and it's like everyone's doing that now. It's like, oh well, WrestleMania is going on right now, so that's why. And it's like, it makes sense, but just kind of try to separate it a little bit and let people like what they like, but sometimes it's bad, and there's nothing wrong with a little criticism. So thank you very much for listening. I've been your host, Ryan Moore, for the Game or Die podcast. If you want to read any of my reviews for anything that I've been talking about, like the Wolverine, Black, White, and Blood comic, or the remake of Panzer Dragoon, I did some write-ups for those. I'll do some reviews for a couple of the other movies I've been talking about. So you can go and check that out at gameordie.net. gameordie.net. This has been the Game or Die podcast. And as always, I have been your host, Ryan Moore. Thank you very much for listening.